It's not that they don't care about women. Something in them just stopped responding. You've seen this type of man. He doesn't chase. He doesn't impress. He doesn't overinvest. He's calm, detached, unbothered. And from the outside, it looks like indifference. But that's not where it started. There was a time when he cared too much. He paid attention. He showed effort. He tried to get it right. And slowly, that effort stopped making sense. It usually begins with experience. You invest emotionally, you show interest. You try to build something real, but what you get back is inconsistent. Attention one day, distance the next. You start to notice something. Effort doesn't guarantee outcome. So your brain starts adjusting. Not emotionally, strategically. But here's something deeper most people don't realize. In psychology, this kind of pattern often reflects what's known as avoidant attachment. Not in the way people casually throw the term around, but in how the brain actually adapts. When someone experiences emotional inconsistency, rejection, or a lack of safe vulnerability over time, the brain learns to reduce dependence on others. It starts to associate closeness with unpredictability, and unpredictability with risk. So instead of seeking connection, it prioritizes control, not because connection isn't wanted, but because control feels safer. Research shows that people with avoidant patterns don't feel less emotion. They often feel just as much, sometimes more, but they suppress outward expression. They regulate internally. They detach behavior to maintain stability. And there's another layer to this. Studies in attachment psychology suggest that avoidant individuals tend to downplay the importance of relationships altogether. Not because they truly don't value connection, but because their mind has learned that needing others creates vulnerability. So over time, they shift their focus toward independence, self-sufficiency, and emotional control, convincing themselves, often unconsciously, that they simply don't need as much from people. That creates the exact man you're looking at: calm, measured, unreactive. Not because nothing affects him, but because he learned to process everything alone. And this is reinforced early. Most men grow up being taught one thing: handle it yourself. Research shows that social norms around masculinity discourage men from expressing vulnerability or asking for help. So when emotional challenges show up, they don't talk, they adapt. And one of the most common adaptations is withdrawal. Not dramatic, not obvious, just less investment. And over time, this becomes more than just a reaction. It becomes a pattern. Because many men are conditioned from a young age to internalize emotions instead of expressing them, told to toughen up or handle things on their own. So when vulnerability starts to feel like weakness, the brain finds another solution. It pulls back, not because there's nothing to say, but because saying it no longer feels safe. And the more this pattern repeats, the more natural it becomes, until withdrawal isn't even a decision anymore. It's just how he operates. This creates a mindset shift. You stop chasing, not as a strategy, but as a conclusion. You realize if someone wants to be there, they will be. So you stop forcing outcomes. You stop overextending. You stop trying to prove your value. And that changes everything. Research shows that in relationships, men are more likely to withdraw during emotional conflict as a way to reduce internal stress. Because emotional situations can feel unstructured, overwhelming, hard to navigate. So instead of engaging, they disengage. And there's another reason this happens that most people miss. Many men don't withdraw because they don't care, but because they expect conflict to make things worse, not better. Over time, they start to associate emotional discussions with negativity, escalation, or outcomes they can't control. So instead of engaging, they avoid it altogether. Not out of weakness, but because, in their experience, talking doesn't fix it, it complicates it. And when the brain starts believing that engagement leads to damage, withdrawal starts to feel like the smarter move. And the more this happens, the more it becomes automatic. Over time, he becomes selective, with attention, with energy, with emotional access. And from the outside, it looks like he doesn't care. But internally, he's just operating differently. He's no longer trying to be chosen. He's observing, deciding, filtering, quietly. But there's a cost to this. Because when you lower emotional investment, you also limit emotional experience. You avoid chaos, but you also avoid depth. You gain control, but you risk disconnection. And that's the trade-off. So what you're really looking at is not a man who doesn't care. It's a man who learned. Where care is not reciprocated, it's wasted. And once that belief sets in, everything changes. So when you look at a man like this, and it seems like he doesn't care, look again. You're not seeing a lack of emotion. You're seeing control. Control built over time, from experience, from patterns, from learning the hard way. He didn't wake up one day and decide to feel less. He adjusted piece by piece, moment by moment, until caring blindly stopped making sense. But here's the part that matters. There's a difference between not chasing and not feeling. There's a difference between being selective and being closed. And if you're not careful, those lines can blur. Because protecting your energy is smart, but disconnecting from everything isn't. The goal was never to become cold. It was to become aware, to stop forcing, to stop overinvesting, to stop losing yourself in things that aren't stable, but not to shut everything down. Because real strength isn't just control, it's control with access. The ability to choose when to open, when to invest, when to care, without losing yourself in the process. And once you understand that, you don't become the man who doesn't care. You become the man who knows exactly when he does. And that's a completely different kind of power.